Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am your co-host Tyler here with my brother Ryan. Today we are doing our mock draft. We are part of that mock draft mania coming out here for the off season. So I'm going to be doing my mock draft. Ryan and I will be alternating weeks when we release our mock draft until the final Monday of the off season before the draft. Then we'll both releasing our final mock drafts. So we're going to get into it here in a second. But before we do that, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified whenever we create new content. We have a bunch of mock drafts coming out, including 3-round and 7-round mock drafts for all 32 teams throughout the NFL. So if you want to see the mock draft for your NFL team, whether it be the Falcons or the Patriots, such as Ryan, or any of the other 30 teams, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ryan, let's pull up PFF here. So we are recording this in between some of the Sunday games. Actually, as of right now, the Lions-Rams game just started. So some of the picks are still going to be kind of as what it was before coming into this week. As you can see, as Ryan has scrolled halfway down now.
Oh, my bad.
You're good. The Packers are still at pick 19. So that's going to be the draft that I go off here. Even by then, too, I think that's one of the things that's very unique about this draft is that really after the top 10, it's like anybody can go in any direction here. So I think my first 8 players, maybe 9 as well, and I'll shout out to him since he is outside the top 8. Those guys are going to be in the top 10 pretty consistently, I feel. After that, I can see a lot of variance. So let's get into it here. With my last mock draft, I went in the philosophy that the Chicago Bears were going to keep Justin Fields. This time, I'm going to go in and actually say they are going to trade Justin Fields. And I'll get to which team I think they're going to trade to here in a second. But I think they're going to go with Caleb Williams here. And this is kind of, for me, the philosophy of this draft was I try and go based off of what I think each team will do for each pick, not what I would do. And so with this pick alone and what to do with Justin Fields, I'm like 50-50 on what I would do. And so, but I think here, if they trade Justin Fields, I do think they'll go with Caleb Williams. He's still my quarterback 1. But from there, though, the Commanders, I think that's clear-cut QB now, especially with Ron Rivera moving out. I'll go with Drake May. And then now with Bill Belichick and the new head coaching regime coming in, I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels as well. Jaden Daniels may be working his way up. Maybe he's not the top pick even here as like a top 3 player in this draft, just as PFF says there. They have him ranked as 11th. But I still feel, though, just with where New England's at, they're going to have a new head coach coming in. Same thing with Washington. I think that's going to push up their quarterbacks here. And so I think it's going to be the first 3 quarterbacks. Now, we're going to see kind of which order. I think the order is going to be defined on who goes first. I don't think Jaden Daniels can jump both Drake May and Caleb Williams, but I think potentially Drake May could jump Caleb Williams. A lot of people actually already have Drake May as the number 1 quarterback. So to me, that's kind of irrelevant. I think it's just all three of these teams are going to go with quarterback, and it's going to be their favorite quarterback. So moving on to number 4, this is the dream scenario for the Arizona Cardinals here. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that's just too obvious. There have been some talks about the Cardinals going with offensive linemen here just because of just trying to rebuild everything, and you do have Olu or Joe Alt, and I get that. However, they have 6 top 100 picks in this draft, and they have another first-round pick, and so maybe they will dabble in the offensive line realm there later on, but we'll have to get to that. Chargers here, to me, I went back and forth a lot. I think it's too early for one of the defensive players, and I kind of went back and forth now between either Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers. Receiving wise, yes, they do have Keenan Allen, but he's getting up there in age. Mike Williams coming off an ACL tear, and then a lot of those guys actually, and a lot of the receivers that they have now currently on the depth chart are going to be leaving here 1 or 2 years. So, and Quentin Johnson's still a big project. Malik Neighbors, I think, could come in. But that being said, though, I actually ended up going with Brock Bowers here. I tricked you there, Ryan. So I ended up going with Brock Bowers here. Jared Everett's getting up there in age. He's had a good career, but I think Brock Bowers could come in, help out with any blocking that Chargers might need to improve on, even though I think they have an average to above average offensive line. So I ended up going with Brock Bowers, then, who's also probably one of the top prospects in the league. So New York Giants here. A lot of talk as well about what they want to go quarterback or go offensive line. I actually think that they are going to go with Malik Neighbors here. I think try and get an elite weapon for Brian Daboll's offense. They haven't really had an elite weapon during his time there. I think this will help whoever will be the quarterback, whether it be Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor, or if they go out into free agency, maybe trade for Justin Fields. I don't think that they're going to do that in this scenario, but still, they're going to need an elite top-end receiver. I think it's going to be Malik Neighbors here. Titans, this is a dream scenario for them. They're going to have either Rome Odunze or a top tackle here in this situation. They could also go DB, but I think it's too early for them in that situation. So I'm actually going to go with a top tackle here. I ended up choosing Joe Alt. They could easily pick Olu here in this one. So Atlanta Falcons now on the clock here. A lot of different ways they go with new head coaching coming in. They could go edge rusher. They absolutely need that help. However, with what Terry Fontenot has done, and they've gone offense the past couple of drafts, I think they're going to go offense again here because one other, I think, key area where the Falcons really lacked was a number 2 receiver. So whether who the quarterback's going to be, and also kind of in this scenario, I envision that the Falcons are going to trade for Justin Fields. They'll give up a second-round pick, and they're going to have 2 third-round picks at minimum from Jacksonville. So I think they could do a second and third and maybe even another one. It's like for 2025 to give to Chicago. I think that might suffice. I don't think a first round. I think the first rounder is too much. So, but I'm going to go with Rome Odunze here. Then you have Rome Odunze, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You have Justin Fields in the backfield, and then with Bijan and Tyler Algier. I really like that whole setup. So Chicago, this is where I think Dallas Turner is going to come off the board. He's right now is my number 1 edge rusher. So I'm going to go with Dallas Turner here. Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, when we did our season recap, I think they were 30th in sacks last year.
Yeah, they were very, very low down in sacks. They had a decent pressure rate, especially after Montez Sweat came in there at the end of the season. But I think with Zach Pickens and Gervin Dexter coming out of their rookie season, going into their sophomore years, and you have Montez Sweat, and you get a guy like Dallas Turner on the other side, that would be a really formidable front. And then you just paid Tremaine Edmonds on the second level of that defense to really be that like big rangy linebacker that can come downhill really well and fill gaps. And that would be a really formidable front. I personally like Jared Verse a little bit better. To me, his speed to power, and he already has more established pass rushing moves. I don't think they can really go wrong with either of these guys. But I just like both guys are top edge rushers in this class and would be higher up if if there weren't other, elite players in front of them.
I completely agree. It could be Jared Verse. And so who knows? I know Chop Robinson didn't have the best year, but maybe he can work his way back up, but probably not. But to me, I think it's just going to be edge rusher. And you can make the same argument. I think like for Tennessee, it's like whether it be Joe Alt or Olu. To me, when I make these picks, it's kind of more based off of who I think like the position I think that they're going to address in a lot of those situations. So then when it's up to those two, in my mind, it's like I don't think they can really go wrong either way. So I think that they're going to get that position here. I think this is also a sneaky trade back spot. The reason why is the New York Jets here, number 10 is going to go with Olu Fashanu. The reason why I think number 9 is a sneaky trade back spot, if you go look at 11, 12, 13, 14, and potentially even 15 in Indianapolis here, some of those teams maybe be like, look, we want to kind of potentially improve our offensive line here. Olu fell to 9. Who knows? Maybe they could trade up. The reason why I didn't trade back is Denver didn't really have the draft capital. Same then with who was I think it was the Vikings as well.
I don't think either of them have second round picks this year.
Yeah, so the Vikings do have a second round pick, and then they only have then day 3 picks. So I feel like it'd be too much. Like the math to me didn't work out to trade up. Denver doesn't have too many picks. The Saints also, I think they only have they have Denver second round actually, and then only day 3 picks, and then Las Vegas as well. Let me pull this up here. Also, Las Vegas potentially could jump, but I think one of the reasons why, and I'll get to them here in a second, is they're actually, according to PFF, they had a top 10 offensive line this year. So maybe they don't feel it's appropriate enough to trade up to Olu. So that's just kind of where maybe the Raiders don't want to trade up. I also think with Minnesota, I think one of their main concerns would be interior offensive line. I think tackles, they actually weren't horrible. So maybe they feel they'd be best to stay put. And the reason they're moving to Minnesota now also, Jersey Newton sitting there for the taking. I think that would be a huge upgrade to the interior defensive line for this team. Instant starter, I think, day one. One of the things, too, that made Minnesota's defense so effective was because they blitzed so much, but it was also, too, because of the weaknesses of that interior defensive line. Neil Hunter's going to be hitting free agency. He's going to be hitting 33. Maybe they won't be able to re-sign him. So I think getting a young Jersey Newton to come in there, maybe take a little bit of pressure off the linebackers and secondaries from having to blitz. And also, too, I think they're going to be addressing those positions that I just said later on in this draft as well. So moving on to Denver now with the 12th overall pick. Last time I had them go with a quarterback in Bo Nix. But this time I think I just don't feel like Bo Nix is a first-round quarterback. Maybe I could be wrong. Once when it comes draft day, then he might work his way up draft boards. Also, I think with J.J. McCarthy now declaring for the draft, that might be a little bit different as well. You also have Michael Penix, so maybe there's different ways that can go here. That being said, I know the Broncos' defense improved immensely, especially in the second half of the season. But I think adding a guy like Jared Verse, guy you just mentioned, I think would be a phenomenal addition to this defensive front here. And then they can kind of start building and just making that a much more well-rounded team, focusing on the offense later on, no matter what the quarterback position is going to be. So here with the Las Vegas Raiders, I will say I pondered over this pick for an extremely long time. I am doing trades in this draft, but I will not end up trading here. I was just trying to figure out really what do the Raiders really need here at this point. And I really thought hard about a corner coming off the board here. I don't think that they would go tackle here. As I said, I do think that their offensive line actually is decent, even though that they had a horrible run performing season this year. I think also that could be thanks to some of their quarterback woes. So, that's actually where I ended up going here. I don't really like this pick, but I would not be surprised with the arm of Michael Penix. And I think they still have Vontae Adams and Kobe Myers, and then you do add on Michael Mayer. If they keep improving that offensive line, and if Josh Jacobs or whichever running back comes back and can keep improving, and they can improve the run game from this past year, because it can't be any worse, for being completely honest. I think Michael Penix would be a route that they go and an avenue that they potentially pursue, have him compete with Aiden O'Connell, because I don't know if Aiden O'Connell is going to be the guy, but I will say I think Michael Penix comes in and I think absolutely brings in just an absolute cannon of an arm. And so with the speed of Devontae Adams, Kobe Myers, and you have Michael Mayer, who's developing into the one of the more top tight ends, I think that could be a route they end up going here. So moving on to 14. Saints, to me, this one's actually a pretty easy selection position-wise. It's just going to depend on which guy that they end up liking. Saints are once again in cap hell, and they also have 4 offensive linemen that are hitting free agency that played, I would say, a significant amount of time here. So I think they're going to go offensive line, start to try and retool and try and get younger. I ended up going with J.C. Latham on this one. So, but it easily could be your guy, Talise Fuaga. It could be Marius Mims, Patrick Paul, or is it Jordan Morgan? It's Jordan Morgan.
To me, you have Talise Fuaga, J.C. Latham, and Amarius Mims in like that second tier of tackles. And then in that third tier, like end of the first round, early second round of like Patrick Paul, Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton, Troy Fatanu out of Washington. Like there's just a few, there's just tiers there. And I just think those guys are much more athletic than in tier 2 than in tier 3. So
So who knows? This is the fun part too about being at the early part of the draft process. It's like these guys' names sound great, but who knows? Like who's going to be the Osiris Torrance, so to say, who's going to go to the Senior Bowl and then just like rise all the way up to the first round. So even though actually I will say he didn't go to the second round, but a lot of people were projecting him to go there. So moving on to the Colts here, I think that they are in a very unique spot as well. You mentioned second wave. I think there could be a second wave of receivers that start here. I ended up going a different route. Their secondary is trash. So I ended up going with what I would say is my top secondary as of right now, Nate Wiggins. But they could easily go with Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry. They could even go with Cooper DeJean as well. Cooper DeJean, I think, also would be a unique one just because he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. And with how bad that secondary is, I could see him maybe fitting in there. So moving on to Seattle here. Pete Carroll's now not the head coach, so it's going to be very unique to see which head coach they hire and his overall type of philosophy. So I will say they do need some help at the defensive line, and I went with Leatu Latu. This is one of the earliest I think I've taken Leatu Latu, but he is such a great player. The reason why he's fallen for me is just because of his injury history. So that will come into factor here. But he honestly, he was probably the best edge rusher in this past class. So moving
He's
on
just
now
old. He's 24,
yeah.
and played against weaker competition.
Yeah, but even for edge rushers, though, I think it's kind of like quarterbacks almost, where you have these guys are playing for till they're 34, 35, And so, but we'll have to see. To me, it's the injury history that would concern me, see if he falls. So,
yeah.
Moving on now to Jacksonville. They could probably go offensive line here. They could maybe even go receiver also as well. I ended up going a different route here. Secondary, I think, needs a lot of improvement. So I went with Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama. They could also go with Cooper DeJean here, also Terry Arnold. So this one, I actually kind of like this pick, really, after I think it might be unique, and I think it's maybe something that Cincinnati would do based on some of their first-round picks in the past. But I actually ended up going with Brian Thomas Jr. here, sticking with the LSU connection. T. Higgins is hitting free agency. Tyler Boyd is also hitting free agency. Cincinnati, I believe, does have a lot of cap space, if I'm remembering correctly. So they could potentially re-sign at least one of them, if not both of them. But even then, too, I think going to get a talent like Brian Thomas Jr., pair him up with Jamar Chase at minimum, I think would be a phenomenal addition. They need to improve on the I personally think on the interior of the offensive line, but they could also improve on right tackle as well after signing Orlando Brown. And to me, defensive-wise, especially defensive line-wise, not too many guys I would want to take here as of right now. So, but I think that could be a second-round pick for sure. So, moving on now to the 19th pick. I know we're recording this on Sunday. I've seen this come out on Monday. Packers beat the Cowboys. They're going to be picking much later than this. So, but still, we're going to keep going down this route here just because at this point now, there's so many different ways I think that they could go, that players could go. And so, based off of just kind of the draft and how I did it here, I ended up actually going with Cooper DeJean. Similar to the Colts, Packers secondary is not the best at all. There's a lot of holes that need to get filled. I think a guy like Cooper DeJean, who's that Swiss Army knife, I think he could come in and help out a lot from day one. So be curious to see here because now the Packers are going to be picking much later since they ended up beating the Cowboys. Not much later, really just 6 or 7 picks. But we'll have to see if he'll be able to make it that far. But if he does, I think that's going to be a great pick for the Packers. Buccaneers here at 20. Literally, I think they can go in any direction. Honestly, the only direction I think they might not go is just going to be quarterback, just because I think they're going to re-sign Baker Mayfield to a nice contract. So I ended up going with Terry Arnold. Once again, they have one of the weaker secondaries in the entire league, and I think they're going up against they're going up against Philadelphia, who also I think they're battling for worst pass defense in the league. So I think they're going to address it there. Going to the Cardinals now here, picking 21 overall with the Houston Texans pick. As I mentioned earlier, potentially they could go offensive line with their 4th overall pick. I think here they're going to be going offensive line. I think they're going to go with the Marius Mims. I think there is some, uniqueness of potentially having him be a project, and I think that's where his overall athleticism, I think is going to help out a lot, and having him be picked over Talif Fruaga. So I think they're going to go with him here. Paris Johnson potentially could kick over to left tackle, or he could say a right tackle, and Kelvin Benjamin, and then who's it? DJ Humphreys, I think, was their left tackle that tore his ACL towards the end of the season. So, but getting a Marius Mims there, I think, provides them a lot of options, I think, moving forward to the 2024 NFL season. So, moving on to the Rams now here. And the Rams, they can also go in a lot of different directions. I think that they'll probably go defensive line, or defense for sure. But this is actually where my one and only trade is going to come into play. I actually have the Rams trading back with the Kansas City Chiefs. The reason why I chose the Chiefs here is I think if you go look at 23, 24, 25, and also then if you go look at the Texans and even the Bills, which are right behind the Detroit Lions, all those teams I think are, with this receiving class, I think are in a very serious contention to draft a receiver. So I think it's going to be very competitive here. So I did the math on Draft Tech, and this is kind of close if they had the trade chart overall. So I actually had Kansas City sending their 1st and their 3rd, and Los Angeles, who has a lot of picks, ended up taking their trading their first, fifth. So let's do 191. And okay, I think the 159 is the fourth. And then let's do the 161 right there. That's about the similar comp overall. And I also think too it helps out with Kansas City getting a couple of later day, a day 3 picks. So they don't have too many picks overall. So I have them trading up here, getting them receiver, and moving back to my mock draft board here. I have them going with Troy Franklin. I think that he would be a great complement to everything that they have right now. Rashee Rice is developing into their kind of possession, middle of the road type guy, that middle of the field, short yard situation. I think Troy Franklin can also do that, but he also has that top end speed. I think that could really open up everything, which would make it a lot easier for Patrick Mahomes to either look at Rashee Rice or Travis Kelce, or even some of their other guys that they want to hang on to. Kadarius Toney, I don't know why, or Sky Moore, or Isaiah Pacheco, or CEH. So I have them trade up here. That's my only trade of this draft here. A lot of guys, I think, so far from my eyes, they just kind of fell into place. And I didn't intend to do that, but there's always seemed like there was a guy that worked for them, or there was just no teams I think that would have traded up or had the draft capital, such as the Raiders situation. So rounding out the draft here, though, look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a lot of different ways the Steelers could go. They could also go corner as well. But the way the draft traded out or went out, the top 4 corners were taken off the board by then. And there's definitely a lot of questions for me with that next set of corners with like Kamari Lassiter, Quinton Mitchell. You have Cameron Kitchens, the safety as well. So I think a lot of different. I think those guys might fall here. I think this is where we're starting to see that wave of receivers coming off the board. Looking at this Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart, they do have George Pickens, who I think is going to be ended up being a clear number 1. I think I like Deontay Johnson as the opposite of him. They don't really have a slot guy as of right now. In my opinion, no, Allen Robinson was on the depth chart. But I think this is where Xavier Worthy can come off the board. I think he'd be a unique fit with his speed. And also one of the reasons why I went with offensive here. Oh, don't know where she did that. Keep going a little bit more. He's going to be a little bit farther down.
Yeah, there.
Honestly, during the entirety of the channel, the Pittsburgh Steelers haven't gone to first round take a defensive player. So I think that they'll keep that trend going. I think they'll go with an offensive player here, add to that receiver group. So Miami's on the clock here now. They need a lot of offensive line help. I think this could be maybe a sneaky quarterback position. We'll get to that here with our Miami Dolphins season recap. But I have Talise Fuaga coming off the board here. Really good run protector. So I think it's going to help with if they want to try and balance out their offense. I think that's going to help out a lot in running the ball, maybe between the tackles a little bit more. But also they just need more offensive line help to protect Tua. So moving on now to Philadelphia. They have one of the weaker secondaries in the league. I think that they will potentially stretch on a guy here in the secondary. They could go Cameron Kitchens. That's who I went with last time. So I tried to go a little bit different. Went with Kamari Lassiter from UGA. Just that UGA connection. So I thought it would be kind of funny. But in general, though, they need a lot of secondary help. They need to get younger at that position. So now the Rams are on the clock here, and they watching this game right now against the Lions. The Lions have been able to move the ball pretty much at ease and throw the ball at ease, which I think kind of helps solidify kind of my idea that they need to go defensive in this draft here. I have them going with Quinton Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. Very curious to see how he does. Pretty sure he's going to the Senior Bowl also to see how he does in combines. He just has the tools to be like in an NFL corner, so I think that's going to help him rise up the stocks. Curious to see how he does. So Houston Texans on the board here. Another receiver coming off the board. I really like A.D. Mitchell. I think he would fit in well with Nico Collins, who's developing into their clear number 1. Tank Dell, I think, is – well, I say clear number 1, and I don't know. Tank Dell, when healthy, he was a clear number 1. So I think A.D. Mitchell then creates so many different options now, I think. And now you have the defenses are going to have to try and figure out how do we stop Nico Collins, Tank Dell, shoot Dalton Schultz if they want to bring him back. And then now you have A.D. Mitchell on the other side. C.J. Stroud's going to have a lot of weapons to throw to. And if they keep running the ball the way that they have with Devin Singletary, if they want to bring him back, or Dameon Pierce then becomes that number 1 guy, that offense is just fully complete. I don't know. It's just pick your poison if they go receiver here. I would say they probably could go defensive line or maybe even linebacker, as you said here, potentially even go secondary. But once again, I'm just not truly convinced yet of some of the defensive guys that are there that, like, unless if a team really needs defensive help, that they'll go first round at this point. So actually, I say that case in point here, going on to the Detroit Lions, I think that they would definitely benefit of helping Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive line. He's having a great season so far. I think getting JT Tuimoloau, I also just kind of like the trolling of Ohio State, Michigan coming together in Detroit. But I also think he would be a good complement to Aiden Hutchinson on the other side of the ball. Could go Chris Braswell, who has declared for the draft, Braylon Trice potentially as well. I also think maybe they could go secondary. I want to watch a little bit more of Enos Rakestraw and also Cameron Kitchens to kind of have a better feeling for them. But I think they'll probably go defensive line first. So I feel like it's kind of the Dan Campbell way. So final couple of picks now going to the Buffalo Bills here. I have them actually going receiver here because they have Stephon Diggs and Khalil Shakur has come on strong. Gabe Davis is their deep threat guy, but also I think he is just a good team leader. So I think that they will potentially end up trying to keep him. I'm pretty sure he's a free agency.
I believe he is.
Yeah, if not, correct us in the comments. But they don't have that like big physical deep threat receiver. And I look at a guy like Xavier Leggett, and I think that he would be a great complement to both Stephon Diggs. I think he would also kind of fit the mold. I feel like him and Josh Allen would immediately become buddies because they're both really physical. So I think he would be very unique in this Buffalo Bills offensive system. You pair him up with Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakur has come on strong in the second half of the season, then you have a really good receiving trio right there. If I wanted to go with defensive interior, there's not too many guys. I think that's a position that they could address later. I will say, actually, I'll kind of good transition here to Dallas. I will say potentially Jeremiah Trotter because they do need some linebacking help after Matt Milano. And then who was the other guy that left? Well,
this is a pretty weak linebacker class.
Well, true, but I think especially this later on, I think guys might rise up the board. So I think Jeremiah Trotter is going to go with the Cowboys here. It's so one of the reasons why, since it is so weak, and the Cowboys, there's not too many things. They maybe could go cornerback here, but once again, I think they can go and address corner later on in the draft, and so I think that would help out a lot. But I think here you go get your best linebacker. They're probably, if there's one thing, especially after watching the game today with the Packers, very weak in the middle of the defensive on the defensive side of the ball. They could probably go and get another edge rusher as well. But once again, I think if you go get the best linebacker, I think that would help out this defense overall. But who knows? They might have a new head coach, probably have new defensive coordinator as well because Dan Quinn's supposedly going to be going to Seattle. So we'll have to see. Moving on now to San Francisco. End up going with Troy Fautanu here. One of the reasons why I like him in this system is Trent Williams is getting older, but also if there is a weakness, and I'm being very picky here, I think maybe the interior could be a little bit better within San Francisco. Troy Fautanu, supposedly with reports, could end up being kicked inside. And so I think having that flexibility, I think they'd like San Francisco here. But not too many faults, I would say, with this San Francisco team overall. So they're probably the best player.
That's definitely a luxury pick.
Lastly, going with the Baltimore Ravens here with the last pick in the 2024 NFL mock draft. End up going with Keon Coleman. I think they're, once again, not too many weaknesses overall with this team. And the reason why I went with Coleman, he's not my favorite receiver prospect, but one of the things, though, to me is I think he's just different than what they have overall currently right now. Zay Flowers is obviously their speedster guy. Like he can create his own space. You can kind of put him anywhere. He could do anything. Odell, we'll have to see if he comes back. I do like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe they come out with a dual tight end offensive setup next year. I think Keon Coleman will be that deep threat guy for them, and I think he can help create some opportunities. And honestly, if he's just doing go routes every single time, it's still going to open up that space for Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman and any other receiver really to kind of do work. So that's my 2024 NFL mock draft that's going to be coming out here on January 15th. Ryan, what are your overall thoughts?
So we'll start in the top 10 here. I mean, I like all these picks. They all make sense. To me, you have the clear like 7, 8, maybe 9 or 10 like blue chip guys like Olaf Shanu, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. I would put Jaden Daniels in that conversation as well. You have Brock Bowers. And then to me, that's where like the water starts to get muddied. All those guys are actually on the offensive side of the ball, which is kind of crazy to think about. But then you have like the Dallas Turners, the Jared Verses, both of those guys I have graded pretty highly as edge rushers. And yeah, so like all those guys I really agree with. In the teens, I do still think Michael Penix is going to be drafted somewhere in the teens. I don't know if I like the pick to Las Vegas, especially. I do think that defense, while played well under Antonio Pierce, I do think they'll probably go on that side of the ball. Or one of the things that I really liked about, or one of the players I really liked that fits their scheme is Talise Fuaga. Talise is one of the best run blockers in this draft. If not the best, like pure run blocker. Just the way he gets out in front of plays, and just kind of like he just leads really well, and he covers a lot of ground for a guy that's 6'6", 335. And to me, I think that would be a perfect fit with Josh Jacobs under contract. I think you give Aiden O'Connell another year, and a team like that I think was competitive. I don't think they should be the ones taking the big swing on Michael Penix Jr. However, I do think a team like Seattle, where Latu went, I think would be a team, especially with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. They run a very down the field, like spread system. Whereas I do feel like the Raiders are going to run something with a little bit more finesse. But again, that will all depend on the coaches that we see. But I don't dislike Michael Penix there because he is going. I do think if you're going to draft Penix, you need to be a team that has pieces in place already. And they definitely have the receiver pieces. And this O-line actually wasn't horrible last year. It wasn't great, but wasn't horrible. And then I like Kool-Aid McKinstry, Brian Thomas Jr. I do think Talise Fuaga, not to keep bringing him up, but he was still on the board here. Jonah Williams is going to be a free agent for them. And so they are going to have a hole at that right tackle spot. And I do think that would be a really good spot for Talise Fuaga. If he's still on the board here, I think he goes 8 to 10 picks higher than where you had him. I like all the wide receivers. And then, yeah, I mean, here in the 20s, it is kind of a pick your poison, or not pick your poison, but pick, like, you're more picking, all right, this is a really good player who might not make it to our second pick, so let's just go ahead and take him here because we think he would fit our scheme really, really well.
Well, and that's one of the things, too, because I know we're doing this kind of all through, like, the Super Wild Card weekend, but to be honest, it's like, it's one of the things that's going to be unique about this draft overall. It's like a lot of these guys, like I could see Marius Mims potentially falling out of the first round. Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy might not be taken there. Kamari Lassiter, like that's where it's like, I think they're going to be picking off needs, best player available, whoever's going to be the top guy that's going to be on their board because there's this overall draft class is so deep.
So I actually do think Marius Mims is a fringe first rounder. Just he has all of the physical tools, but I think we look at Broderick Jones, even as raw as he was coming out last year, was much more polished than what Marius Mims is right now. And he went 14 in a not that great draft class last year. And then I think you look at this draft class and it's like, okay, he's competing against like some real plug and play starters. I mean, I think you have 3 guys, even maybe 4 with J.C. Latham at the top of this draft. They're like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and put this guy at right tackle and not have to worry about it. Like, or left tackle if you get Fashanu and Joe Alt. And it's like, all right, and then that spot is secure. Even with Amarius Mims, he's a freak athlete, and I think you're drafting him on traits alone. And to me, that's a back end of the first round type of prospect.
Yeah, so it's going to be crazy overall. And so I will say, and you've been saying this for a long time, just kind of my last comment is I do think that the receivers are going to rise up. The board's going to be a lot of receivers. I think I had 9, if I'm not mistaken, in this mock draft. I think that's very reasonable. Also considering, too, who's going to be taken or who's going to be picking early on in the second round. Panthers picking first overall in the second round. And I think it's almost guaranteed that they're going to go with the top receiver on the board. Potentially maybe offensive line overall. But we'll have to see. But yeah, that's my mock draft. Leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And Brian, if there's anything else you want to finish up with.
The only other thing I had was Jeremiah Trotter. I don't think any linebackers will go in the first round here. I didn't think that would happen last year, and then we still had who's the guy the Lions drafted? Jack Campbell. So we'll see if there's a riser here, but right now I don't have any linebackers really graded out in the first round, especially with the Cowboys. I think they could have gone with maybe a better run stuffing or run defender on the edge. To go opposite of Micah Parsons or what, but all in all, no, I thought it was good. I mean, all of the picks make sense. You're very high on Quinion Mitchell. This is the second time you've had him in the top 32. So,
well, he has. I'm curious to kind of see is because there's not overall secondary wise. There's not too much. After those first four guys, there's a lot of flaws, but projects, and so I think it like the Rams team here, who needs a lot of secondary help. I think they potentially take a flyer on him.
Yeah. So I like it. Let's go ahead and wrap up your first solo 2024 NFL mock draft. Again, if you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on any critiques, praises. Let us know. We want to hear from you down below. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.